Okay, let's continue with the 11 organ systems. In an earlier video, you heard me mention the integumentary system. Now, integumentary primarily is the skin, but it's a lot more than the skin. It's the hair, it's your nails, it's your sweat glands. And the primary function of the integumentary system is really to protect the body against different types of environmental hazards. The skin and the hair also helps to regulate body temperature. The hair is also involved in providing sensory information to us. If you think about it, when the wind blows and hits the hairs on your head or the hairs on your arm or leg, that provides a lot of data to the neural system. You can tell when an insect is even crawling on you, right? So the integumentary, especially the skin, is super important part of your immune system. We have immune cells that lie on top of the skin. So I believe and I will predict that we will see a variety of some other health-related problems due to the time that we're living in with the overly hygiene that we're putting our hands under with all of the disinfectants, because you are killing, all of us happen to be killing healthy natural bacteria that we should have on our hands. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Okay, we want to try and keep some healthy bacteria on our hands. Having good bacteria is really important because it helps to keep the bad bacteria in check. Okay, we know this when someone needs to take an antibiotic. We know that it kills all bacteria in the gut, which is why people take probiotics and why they should take probiotics. 80 to 90% of your immune system is actually in the gut. So if your gut is disturbed, so will your immune system. This is why we see a lot of COVID in morbid obesity, and people who are morbidly obese have a much more difficult time managing because of the microbiome in the gut. Okay? Now let's look at the skeletal system. When we look at the skeletal system, everything here in the center is the axial skeleton, and then the upper limb and lower limb is the appendicular. When we talk about the skeletal system, it's not just the bones, but it is the associated cartilage, ligaments, and bone marrow. Now, ligaments are soft tissue. They go from bone to bone. They hold bones in alignment to one another. I don't want you confusing ligaments with tendons. So tendons are an extension of muscle. Muscles attach to bones by way of tendons. Muscles contract, which means they generate tension. They transmit that tension to tendons, and then tendons attach to the bone and pull and move the bone. Bones provide protection. Look at the brain. The brain is completely protected by this helmet called the cranium or the skull. The heart and the lungs are protected by the ribs. The reproductive organs are protected by the pelvis. The spinal cord is protected by the 24 freely movable vertebrae. In terms of these vertebrae, the freely movable vertebrae, we have 7 in the neck, we have 12 in the mid-back, and then we have 5 in the lower back. The ones in the neck, we call them cervical, so C for cervical. In the mid-back, T for thoracic, and L for lumbar. So there are C1 to C7, so you have 7 cervical vertebrae, 12 thoracic vertebrae, and 5 lumbar. Just remember you eat at 7 a.m., 12 noon, and 5 p.m. You eat 3 times a day, 7 a.m., 12 noon, and 5 p.m. Just a silly, easy way to remember how many vertebrae you have in the 3 main parts of the spine. Another important function of the skeletal system is that it is a reservoir. Now, if you have too much cash in your pocket, it's always a good problem to have, right? But you don't want to walk around with so much cash. So what would you do? You would go to the bank and deposit it in the bank. And then as you need more cash, you can go to the bank and take some out. Of course, this is before Zelle and before Venmo days, right? When people really carried cash with them. Uh, so the bones serve as a similar purpose as a bank. When you have an excessive amount of nutrients or minerals and vitamins that are in excess and the body doesn't need it anymore to use it for instant function, it puts it in the bones, it stores it there, and whatever's left over you can excrete out through urination and defecation. Now, when your body runs low on those nutrients, if you happen to be in a fasting state and you're not eating or you're starving for whatever reason, your body taps into the bones and removes the minerals. Okay, so hopefully that gives you a little critical thinking into osteopenia or osteoporosis. It is a bone softening, but why? Right? Perhaps the person is malnourished or not in a healthy state, and it's using the minerals within the bones to help keep their organs functioning, or there's some eating disorder, okay, or a hormonal disorder, or there's chronic inflammation in the body. All reasons for osteopenia or osteoporosis. The bones also form blood cells. Within the bones, we can make red blood cells, and we can make white blood cells as well. The formation of blood is called hematopoiesis. Hematopoiesis is the formation of blood. If we're making red blood cells, or RBCs, it's called erythropoiesis. The terms poiesis means to produce. So erythro is red. Erythropoiesis is red blood cell production. So here, let's take a look at what's highlighted. What would this be? Is it the appendicular skeleton? That would be out here. Thanks for playing. Is it the peripheral skeleton? You never heard me use the term peripheral skeleton. The only place you heard me use the word peripheral in another lecture is the peripheral neural system. Is it the central skeleton? You never heard me use central in relationship to the skeleton. You did hear me say central neural system. Or is it the axial skeleton? If you thought axial, you are correct. This is the axial skeleton. Everything that is blue and everything that is not blue or tan in color would be the appendicular skeleton. The muscular system. Here we're primarily interested in skeletal muscles, not so much cardiac and smooth, but skeletal muscle provides movement. When they contract, which means generate tension, they pull on bones and they help us move. Muscles also generate heat. Think of, well, in Florida, you don't have much of this problem, but in the Northeast, it can get cold, right? So when it gets cold, I'm one of those people that wear shorts all year long. But there are times if I go out in shorts when it's 15 or 20 degrees, if I'm outside for a long period of time talking with someone, maybe my teeth are going to start chattering or shaking, or my muscles may start to tremor, because when muscles shake and move, they generate heat. Think of exercising. When you exercise and your muscles are contracting, you sweat because of heat. Think of someone that has a fever. If they have 103 or 104 fever, I remember one year my son had 105.2. And we really trust the innate intelligence of the body, and we don't run to aspirin and Tylenol right away. The rule in my household was always, if they can't sleep, then we use some sort of Tylenol or aspirin to reduce the fever a little bit to get them comfortable. But having the fever, having that internal incinerator working, burns up the bacteria, helps the virus, because these viruses and bacteria love to thrive in 98 or 98.3 or 97 degrees body temperature. Once the internal incinerator turns on, it doesn't like it too much. So 105, I remember when my son had the croup, he had this virus and it was rough on him, and his body was so hot you can cook an egg on it. But he was shaking. His body was shivering. But the next morning when he woke up, he was a brand new kid. Brand new kid. But he had to go through a little bit of that discomfort and suffering of the fever to come out of it stronger, and it trained his immune system to be ready for these things, right? It's like training for a competition. You can't baby it all the time. It must be challenged to a degree. If you think of people that need a higher fever than 105, right? People get nervous with fevers, but brain cells die at 107.9 degrees. 107.9. Remember that number so you don't get so nervous in the future. Can't get, 102, 103 people get nervous. Oh, the brain cells are going to die. 107.9 is the magic number. But if it reaches 105, think of what happens to many people if the virus or bacteria gets worse, but their hypothalamus isn't working strong enough to raise the fever more. What happens? We call it a febrile seizure, when the eyes roll back, and what happens to the muscles? They go into a febrile seizure. Everything starts locking up and shaking so quickly. Why is it shaking? Because the muscles are involved in generating more heat. It's amazing, the innate intelligence of the body and what it can do. So here, what are we looking at? Highlighted is the skeletal system, but what part of the skeletal system? Remember, the other picture showed the skeleton in the middle, and that was the axial skeleton. Now we're looking at the muscles in the limbs. That is called the appendicular muscles. Okay. The neural system is the brain, the spinal cord, the peripheral nerves, and the sensory organs. The neural system, you hear me say neural. I don't like using the word nervous. I don't like being nervous. People don't like being nervous. It's not a healthy feeling. So I like the word neural for the neural system. The neural system has a variety of functions, and one of those functions is to take in data. It takes in sensory information. Is it hot out? Is it cold out? What's happening in your environment? It takes in that sensory information, it processes that information, and then it spits out a motor command. So it takes in sensory data, it comes in, and it ascends up to the brain. Then it processes it here, and then it sends out motor information down and out. Motor information, it goes down and out to muscles or down and out to organs and glands. Here is the brain and the spinal cord. Well, what is its primary function? It is the control center of the body. It is the control center. The endocrine system, a beautiful system, one of my favorite systems to teach. We will discuss this endocrine system in a lot more detail in another lecture, but just some of the major organs and glands. In the brain, we have the pituitary gland. In the brain, we also have the pineal gland. In the abdominal region, we have the pancreas and the kidneys. You also have the liver. We have above the kidneys are the adrenal glands. We have the thyroid gland in the throat. All of these are creating chemical messengers known as hormones. And these hormones are going to signal to other parts of the body to help control their metabolism. We've heard of people that have a fast metabolism or a slow metabolism, a hyperactive thyroid or hypoactive thyroid. It also controls the structure and functional changes during sexual development, right? Because of the gonads. The ovaries and the testes both produce hormones that help with sexual development. So what are we looking at here? What is the highlighted structure here in blue? Well, if we look at the choices, adrenal gland, no, that would be here and here. Let's see if I could draw that. So that's an adrenal gland, and right there is an adrenal gland. Right here is one kidney. Here's the other kidney. Here is the thymus, not to be confused with the thyroid gland. Now up here, this is the thyroid gland, but these small circles here, 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 and here, those are the parathyroid glands. So the parathyroid gland is on the posterior side or the back side of the thyroid gland. Okay? And here is the ovary, and here's another ovary. This is the uterus. So this right here would be the pancreas. I'll put P for pancreas. So best answer, pancreas. Cardiovascular, major organs, heart, blood, blood vessels. Primary function is to distribute blood cells, water, dissolved materials, which include nutrients and waste products, and also oxygen and carbon dioxide. And the blood vessels are also involved in distributing heat and assisting in control of body temperature. Think about this. You walk, you slip on a step, your ankle rolls in, we go, ouch, it's inflamed, it's swollen. And if you look at it, it's red, hot, and swollen. Why is it red? Lots of blood rushing to the area. Why is it swollen? Lots of blood in the area. And it's hot. Why is it hot? Well, it's hot because blood is about 100 degrees in temperature. So what are we looking at here? In this particular picture, the highlighted blue structure would be the heart. Where is the aorta? The aorta is this structure here, comes off the heart. Lymphatic system is made up of the spleen, thymus, lymphatic vessels, lymph nodes, tonsils, and it's really our internal army, Navy, Marines, okay? It helps to defend us against infection and disease and helps to return healthy, clean fluid back into the bloodstream. The respiratory system. The nasal cavity, the sinuses, larynx, trachea, bronchi, lungs, alveoli. What is the primary function? Well, it needs to deliver oxygen to all of our cells and tissues of the body. It needs to provide oxygen into our bloodstream so the blood can take it to every single organ and tissue and cell of the body, and then it's involved in removing the carbon dioxide, which is the waste product. You breathe in oxygen, you blow out CO2. Where does that CO2 come from? The mitochondria of the cell does cellular respiration. It needs oxygen, but the exhaust of ATP production is CO2. That's carbon dioxide. And the respiratory system is also involved in producing sounds for communication. This right here is our upper respiratory tract. And if it was below that, it would be the lower respiratory tract. So best answer for the blue structure is the upper respiratory tract. You've heard of people having an upper respiratory tract infection compared to a lower respiratory tract infection. That's why we wear a stethoscope and put the stethoscope on different parts of the lungs to hear if there's any abnormal sounds here. That would be a lower respiratory tract infection. Or do we hear the sounds primarily up on top, which is an upper respiratory tract infection? The digestive system is made up of the lips and the teeth and the tongue and the pharynx and the esophagus and the stomach and the liver and the pancreas and the gallbladder and the small and large intestine. And a primary function is to process and digest food. It absorbs and conserves water, absorb nutrients, and to store energy reserves. Now, most people hear you are what you eat. Now, I happen to be the associate director for the #1 master's program in the world in terms of nutrition. And this saying, I have so many people come in that used to be health coaches and health counselors and nutritional coaches. It's not you are what you eat. And that's just the thing that people say. It's not you are what you eat. Think about this. If a child swallows a quarter or swallows a marble or accidentally swallows a pebble, does the child become the pebble, the quarter, the marble? No. They poop that marble out 2 days later or a day later or the same day. It's not you are what you eat. It's you are what you can absorb and assimilate. That which can get into your tissues, that becomes you. Okay, so be careful with the words that we use. It's not you are what you eat, it's you are what you can absorb and assimilate. So what's the name of this organ right here? Well, is it the stomach? No, it's not the stomach. Is it the liver? No, this is the liver right here. This is the liver, this is the esophagus, the stomach is right here. This is the large intestine up here. This is the ascending colon going up. This is the transverse colon going down. This is the descending colon going this way. And this is the sigmoid colon going here. And then you have the rectum. So in the middle that's highlighted blue, that is, whoop, my bad. That is the small intestine. Sorry, it is the, let me cross this out. It is the small intestine. The small intestine is made up of the duodenum, jejunum, and ileum. Okay, here we're looking at, I think I gave it away before, well, if this here in the middle is the small intestines, then that makes the blue the large intestine. This is the ascending colon going up, transverse colon going across, descending colon going down, and then you have the sigmoid colon that makes the swirl. And then at the bottom is the rectum. So large intestine is the blue. Now, in the digestive tract, we have primary digestive organs, and then we have secondary accessory organs. Now, the primary is going to be the esophagus, the stomach, the small intestine, the large intestine. That's all primary. The salivary glands in the mouth and the liver and the gallbladder and pancreas, these are all considered accessory digestive organs. Okay, they're important, they're just accessory, but they're not the main primary. In terms of the urinary system, we have the, remember, 2 kidneys, 2 ureters, 1 urinary bladder, and 1 urethra. Primary function is to excrete waste products from the blood. It's regulating water balance, and it regulates the volume of urine being produced. It also regulates the potential of hydrogen, or percent hydrogen. Male and female reproductive. The male reproductive, the gonads, the testes, the epididymis, the ductus deferens or vas deferens, seminal vesicle, prostate gland, penis, and the scrotum. Whoops. The function of the male reproductive tract primarily is, especially the testes, is to help produce the male sex cell, which is sperm. It's also involved in producing many fluids as well as hormones, especially testosterone, and it's also involved in sexual intercourse. The female reproductive is the ovaries, the uterine tube, also known as the fallopian tube, the uterus, vagina, labia, clitoris, and the mammary glands. All female reproductive. Primary purpose is to produce the female sex cell, which is the egg or the oocyte, as well as hormones like estrogen and progesterone. It also supports the developing embryo from conception to delivery, and provides milk for nourishment of the newborn, especially when we're talking about the mammary glands, and also sexual intercourse for reproduction. Okay, let's take a break here.